Spending on Idaho education is projected to account for more than $4.6 billion of the total state budget in the new fiscal year. This exorbitant price tag is riddled with wasteful spending and often subsidizes programs that do not support Idaho values. This week saw presentations from public schools, the State Board of Education, and Idaho medical education programs like the WWAMI program. Public schools are second only to Medicaid for the most expensive line item in the state budget. As we can see, they have a great deal of spending planned for the next fiscal year. Flush with federal funds to support new projects and programs, the education establishment is poised to set a new record budget for education spending. More than half of every tax dollar that Idahoans pay to the state will go to public schools. When adding in universities and federal spending, the education budget occupies 1/3 of all state spending. Some of the new spending items were several new administrative positions. Among these included a new school choice coordinator to oversee private, charter, online, and homeschooling activities throughout the state, as well as 2 new literacy coordinators. All of the new administrative roles amount to just under $500,000 in costs to the taxpayer. In the public schools appropriation, children's programs hosted the bulk of federal funding, including more than $394 million in COVID relief funding through so-called ESSER funding. This funding is very general in its purpose, as Superintendent Debbie Critchfield said in her testimony before Joint Finance Appropriations Committee Wednesday. The loopholes in the requirements are so large and general that you can drive a school bus through them, as she said. Critchfield asserted that funds like these would be important to keeping school districts from having to raise property taxes. However, the data shows that this is not the case. Looking at property tax compared to public school spending over the last 10 years in real dollars, more spending on public education never lowered supplemental levies at any time. The theory that more funding for a bureaucratic agency leads to lower taxes is patently false. All that's happened is the federal government has more control over Idaho education. Like the public schools, Idaho's public universities are sparing no expense in their budget requests either. Idaho's public universities are still deflecting critiques on their spending for diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. However, they've taken a different path when it comes to deflecting questions about how this constitutes an appropriate expense of taxpayer dollars. Despite hosting 68 DEI employees and administrators system-wide at a cost of $4 million in salaries alone, universities have come to openly admitting that these positions exist on their campus. Though they try to say that no state funds go toward administering these programs, this does not account for the cost of the activities that these positions support. It is laughable that the director of the LGBTQIA office at the University of Idaho is there to support the needs of rural students, as President C. Scott Green alluded to in his presentation this Friday. In the vein of diversity spending in the Idaho public education system, the Idaho medical education system is not immune. The Idaho WWAMI program is a cooperative between the University of Idaho and the University of Washington School of Medicine to administer a satellite medical school in the state of Idaho. The governor's recommended budget for the program is $7.3 million in the next fiscal year. But Idaho is unwittingly paying to import wokeism into the medical profession. The school offers several courses on transgenderism, LGBTQ healthcare, and critical race theory. Ironically, these programs are similar in nature to the ones that caused the legislature to defund Idaho universities during the 2021 legislative session. Worse yet, the University of Washington School of Medicine is currently under fire for selling the parts of unborn babies that were aborted in regional Planned Parenthood clinics. A 2016 congressional report found that students and faculty were allowed to work at the Planned Parenthood clinics and encouraged women to donate their unborn children to the school for research purposes. The dean of Idaho WWAMI, Dr. Jeff Siegmiller, is expected to report back to the committee as to how much funding from the state of Idaho is going to support such programs. With the third week of JFAC in the books, Attention will turn to executive branch agencies, the Department of Corrections, and agencies that manage Idaho's natural resources and lands. The theme of large sums of federal spending is expected to continue as agencies clamor for additional funds before an impending economic downturn. For more information on these topics, including our articles and other Fiscal Fridays episodes, please visit idahofreedom.org.